When you keep repeating the same mistakes, it's not because you're stupid. It's because something inside you is unresolved. Something hidden. Something screaming in silence. You find yourself in the same arguments, the same kind of relationships, the same regrets, over and over, like déjà vu with sharper edges. You tell yourself, I should have known better. But the truth is, knowing isn't enough, because beneath the surface of what you know is what you believe, and that belief is shaped by wounds you never chose, but still carry. That's the secret no one talks about. You're not stuck in a cycle because you're weak. You're stuck because a part of you is still trying to heal by repeating the familiar. Carl Jung called this the unconscious, the shadow self. He said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. So today, we go there, into the place where mistakes aren't accidents, they're mirrors, and every repetition is a call to finally look inside. You keep making the same mistake, because a part of you thinks it's the only way to survive. You choose the same kind of partner, not because you love pain, but because pain feels familiar. You stay in toxic situations, not because you enjoy suffering, but because your nervous system is addicted to the chaos it already knows. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the part of your psyche that holds everything you've repressed, denied, disowned, every fear, every unmet need, every truth you were punished for showing. And here's the paradox. The more you try to avoid your shadow, the more it controls you. You repeat what's unhealed. You attract what reflects your wounds, and the outer world becomes a mirror, showing you what you refuse to face, not to punish you, but to wake you up. Jung said the shadow isn't evil. It's simply everything you haven't yet brought into the light. So the cycle repeats, not because you're broken, but because you're being invited to stop blaming fate and start becoming conscious. Because consciousness, not control, is what breaks the loop. But first, you have to be willing to see what's hiding in the dark. So here's the truth most people never realize. You don't just repeat mistakes, you repeat emotions. The mistake is just the symptom. The emotional loop is the root. That same tightness in your chest, the panic when someone pulls away, the need to fix, to prove, to beg for connection, that's what comes back, again and again. And your mind keeps choosing situations that let you feel it, not because you're cursed, but because a younger part of you is trying to resolve something that was never resolved back then. Jung taught us that the psyche is always moving toward wholeness. Even when it looks like sabotage, it's actually a cry for completion. You date the same kind of person hoping this time you'll be seen. You stay in the same job hoping this time you'll be valued. You explode in the same argument hoping this time they'll understand. But nothing changes because the healing doesn't happen out there. It begins the moment you realize you're not broken, you're looping. And loops aren't ended with willpower, they end with awareness. But awareness hurts, because it means seeing how long you've been at war with yourself. So, are you ready to stop fighting shadows with noise? Are you ready to listen? Because your shadow's been waiting. You don't just repeat mistakes, you recreate yourself inside them. Every loop is a ritual, every trigger is a doorway, and every mistake is an echo. an echo of the first time you felt abandoned, the first time you weren't heard, the first time love meant walking on eggshells. And now, you live from that echo. You respond to life not as it is, but as it was. The past runs the present, and you call it your personality. Carl Jung said we all wear a persona, a mask. It protects the wound. It smiles while you bleed. It performs while your real self hides underground, waiting for you to stop pretending, waiting for you to notice the loop is sacred, not shameful. Sacred, because every repetition carries the exact medicine you've been avoiding. And the moment you face it, truly see it, the loop begins to dissolve. Not because you fixed anything, but because you finally listened to the pattern, to the pain, to the self underneath the mistake. Who's been screaming, "Please, choose me this time"? And the question is, will you finally choose the self you abandoned to keep others close? It's not the mistake that hurts most. It's what you make it mean about you. You mess up, and suddenly you're unworthy. They leave, and suddenly you're unlovable. You get rejected, and suddenly you're a burden. But what if the mistake never meant any of that? What if it was just life showing you where your heart still bleeds, where the wound still whispers lies? You're not here to be perfect. You're here to wake up. Carl Jung said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Not the polished self, not the smiling one, but the messy, angry, frightened version of you that's been locked away. And that version is the one repeating the cycle. Not to punish you, but to say, please stop abandoning me." So today, just for a moment, ask yourself, what mistake keeps showing up in my life? And what version of me keeps repeating it? Drop it in the comments. No shame, no filter, just truth. Because sometimes the pattern starts to break the moment you speak it aloud. And maybe, just maybe, someone else reading your story will find the courage to face theirs. You ever wonder why it's so hard to stop? Even when you know it's wrong. Even when you swear you'll never do it again. You block them, then unblock. You leave, then go back. You promise yourself peace, then chase chaos. It's not logic. It's not stupidity. It's the unconscious pulling strings behind your choices. Carl Jung called it the autonomy of the complex. Little clusters of pain, frozen in time, acting like they have a life of their own. They hijack your reactions. They whisper in your ear. They make the past feel safer than the unknown. Because healing is terrifying. Healing means losing the identity built on suffering. It means saying goodbye to the drama that made you feel alive. It means facing the void that comes when the loop breaks and your nervous system panics, not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're doing something new. And the unconscious hates new. So next time you feel the pull, the craving to repeat, pause, breathe, say, "This isn't me. It's just an old story trying to stay alive." And if that hits you, just comment below. I see the story now. Let's make the unconscious conscious. The loop survives through one thing: your reaction. It feeds on your need to explain, to defend, to be understood. But what if you stopped? What if the next time they poked your wound, you didn't flinch? Carl Jung said, "What you resist persists." And every time you react, you resist. You fight the trigger. You try to change them. You argue with the moment. And that keeps you trapped. But when you pause, truly pause, something shifts. Silence enters. Stillness enters. Awareness enters. And the pattern starves. Because the loop can't live without your energy, your fear, your outrage, your explanation. So the next time the moment comes, and it will, don't rush to reply. Don't justify your peace. Don't explain your distance. Just witness. Because when you become the observer, not the actor, you break character. You step off the stage. And that's when healing begins. If you've ever felt the urge to defend yourself, only to realize later it wasn't worth it, drop A in the comments. Let it be your quiet revolt. Every time you react, you spend energy. Not just mental, psychic energy. And Jung saw the psyche like a battery. Everything you think, feel, say, costs something. That late-night overthinking drains you. That imaginary argument in the shower drains you. That need to prove you're good enough, over and over, drains you. And what's left when you've given it all away? Exhaustion, numbness, that fog where your soul used to be. But here's the thing, you didn't lose your energy, you leaked it. Through every unconscious yes, through every forced smile, through every fight you didn't need to enter. It's not that you're broken, you're just unprotected. And when you're unprotected, manipulators feel it. They smell it. They press your guilt, your fear, your need to be seen. Not because they're evil, but because you've never been taught to guard your energy. So now, you must become the keeper of your own flame and ask daily, is this worth my life force? Because that's what it is, not time. Life. Comment, I take my energy back, if you feel ready to stop leaking your soul. Want to know where the loop lives? Look at what triggers you. Look at what hijacks your calm. Look at what makes you forget who you are. That's the map. That's the exit. Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life. And the unconscious speaks through triggers. That jealousy that eats at you? Clue. That panic when they pull away? Clue. That rage when someone ignores you? Clue. Each one points to a place where you're still split, still unclaimed, still waiting to be chosen by you. So stop asking, why is this happening to me? And start asking, what is this trying to show me about me? You are not weak for being triggered. You're just overdue for integration. So write them down, name them, trace them to their origin. Because the loop hides in your blind spots. And the moment you shine a light, it loses power. Comment, I see my triggers, if you're ready to stop running and start reclaiming the parts you've abandoned. Ever notice how some people trigger you without saying a word? It's not about them. It's about the part of you they reflect. Carl Jung called it projection, when we see our denied self in someone else. You hate their arrogance, but it mirrors your fear of being seen. You mock their sensitivity, but deep down, you're starving for permission to feel. You chase their love because they reflect the version of you you're still trying to earn. It's not just others projecting onto you. You're projecting too. Onto lovers, onto strangers, onto God. It's how the loop survives, by hiding in mirrors. But once you know this, everything changes. You stop trying to fix them. You start reclaiming you. You say, this isn't about them. This is about the part of me I still won't love. And that's when the mirror breaks. So, who triggers you the most? Name them, or name what they bring up. Not to judge, not to shame. To reclaim. Drop it in the comments with, I'm ready to see my reflection. Because the loop ends when the mirror no longer fools you. When you stop playing your role, people get uncomfortable. Not because you've changed, but because they can no longer control who you pretend to be. The mask falls, and now they're face to face with your truth. Carl Jung called this the collapse of persona, the moment your survival identity crumbles. You stop being the peacekeeper, the fixer, the agreeable one, and suddenly, you're difficult. You're too much. You're not who you used to be. But that's not a problem. That's proof. Proof you're healing. Proof you're integrating. And here's the catch. When you remove the mask, their shadow starts to show. The ones who needed you to stay small. They panic. Because now they must meet themselves. And not everyone's ready for that. So if you've been called selfish, cold, distant, just because you stopped overgiving, let that be your badge. Your evolution will threaten those who benefited from your self-abandonment. Comment, I dropped the mask, if you're done performing love and ready to become it. After the mask drops, comes the silence. Not the silence of punishment, not the silence of fear, but a sacred silence. The kind that tastes like clarity, the kind that echoes your real voice. Carl Jung said, until you make peace with who you are, you'll never be content with what you have. And you can't make peace in noise. You need the quiet, the withdrawal, the brave, slow retreat into your own soul. Because that's where you meet yourself again. And here's the truth. This silence won't be understood by many. They'll call it cold. They'll call it rude. But it's not. It's radical self-respect. You no longer explain. You no longer chase. You no longer convince. You listen. You observe. You protect your peace like it's sacred. Because it is. If you've ever felt guilty for needing space, solitude, silence, don't. Comment, I honor my silence, if you're learning that not every response deserves your energy. Sometimes, the quiet is the revolution. Here's the part no one warns you about. Healing will cost you people. Not because they were bad, but because they only knew how to love your mask. When you become whole, you become unfamiliar, too quiet, too honest, too sovereign. And those who depended on your wounds start to feel abandoned. They say, you've changed. But what they really mean is, you're no longer who I needed you to be. Let that sink in. Carl Jung said individuation, becoming your true self, requires sacred isolation. Not loneliness, but separation. From the noise, from the roles, from the mirrors. Because your truth doesn't scream. It whispers. and you can only hear it in the silence after the mask breaks. So if you're losing people, if the phone is quieter, if the room feels colder, don't panic. You're not being rejected. You're being refined. Comment, "I'm choosing peace," if you're learning that solitude isn't punishment, it's preparation. Once the noise fades, you begin to hear a different voice. Not theirs, not society's. Yours. At first it's faint, timid, unsure. But soon, it starts to rise. Carl Jung said that true healing doesn't come from fixing. It comes from integration. Bringing home every part of you once left behind just to belong. And now, you don't belong to them. You belong to you. You eat slower, breathe deeper, say less, but mean more. You stop reacting. You start choosing. Not out of fear, but from knowing. This is what power feels like when it's no longer performative. It's silent. It's still. It's sovereign. So if your peace makes others uncomfortable, let it. You weren't made to fit their version of safe. You were made to remember. Comment, "I reclaim myself," if you're ready to rebuild. Not from wounds, but from wholeness. Let's talk about boundaries. Not as walls, but as acts of love. When you say no, you're saying yes to your nervous system, to your sleep, to your sanity. Carl Jung believed that boundaries aren't just about protecting yourself. They're about protecting the relationship from turning into control. Because without boundaries, love becomes performance. Connection becomes survival. And you disappear. So every time you hold the line, every time you don't respond immediately, every time you choose rest over proving, you are healing. Not just yourself, but your lineage. You're teaching your body that it no longer has to earn worth through self-erasure. You're telling your inner child, "I will not abandon you just to keep being liked." That is sacred. So if you've been afraid to set a boundary, remember, the ones who love your soul will never punish your no. Comment, "Boundaries are love," if you're done betraying yourself to be accepted by others. One of the hardest lessons you'll ever learn is this: you don't owe anyone an explanation for choosing your peace, not your silence, not your distance, not your healing. We've been conditioned to believe that love equals constant access, immediate replies, endless availability. But Carl Jung taught that individuation, the journey to becoming whole, requires sacred withdrawal. Not to hurt others, but to finally hear your own voice without their noise. And yes, it will confuse them. Yes, they might guilt you. Yes, they might call you selfish. But hear me clearly. You are not selfish for closing the door that's been draining your soul. You are not cold for protecting the energy you used to give away for free. You are not wrong for walking away from anything that made you disappear to stay loved. If the silence feels strange, let it be strange. It's not emptiness, it's space for something true to grow. Comment, "I owe no one my peace," if you're done explaining your need for healing. Guilt will whisper in your ear, "You're abandoning them. You're being too harsh. You used to be nicer." But let's be honest, you weren't nice. You were overgiving. You weren't peaceful. You were people-pleasing. You weren't present. You were performing. And now that you've stopped, guilt shows up. Not because you've done wrong, but because you're doing different. Carl Jung said our psyche resists transformation because the ego fears death. And what's dying now? The version of you who kept everyone comfortable. So guilt isn't a sign you're bad. It's a sign you're breaking the contract you never agreed to. The contract that said, I'll shrink so you feel big. I'll hurt so you feel safe. I'll disappear so you feel secure. That contract, it's burned now. So when guilt comes, greet it gently. Say, thank you for showing me who I no longer am. Comment, I release the guilt, if you're ready to stop mistaking self-abandonment for kindness. And now comes the silence. Not the sacred kind, but the hollow kind. The kind that aches. You'll wonder, did I do the right thing? Have I pushed too far? Will I end up alone? This is the void. Carl Jung said that before any true transformation, we must pass through the nigredo, the dark night of the soul. It's lonely. It's disorienting. It's tempting to go back. But don't, because this isn't the end. It's the in-between. The space where the old self has died, but the new one hasn't fully formed. Like the breath between inhale and exhale. Like winter before spring. You are being reconstructed. So let the loneliness teach you. Let it burn away the need for validation. Let it clear the space for your real self to emerge. You are not falling apart. You are falling into place. Comment, I welcome the void if you feel the ache, but no rebirth is near. And then one day, the silence shifts. It no longer screams. It sings. Not loud, not flashy, but clear. You start to feel something return, not from outside, but from within. Your own presence, your own breath, your own rhythm. Carl Jung said the path to individuation requires separating from the collective. It's not rebellion, it's remembrance. And now, you remember. What food tastes like when you're not anxious. What rest feels like when you're not proving anything. What your voice sounds like when it's not filtered through fear. You're not lonely anymore. You're with you. And it's enough. You miss fewer people. You answer slower. You look in the mirror and see someone rising. The ache is still there, but now it has purpose. The silence still lingers, but now it holds you. Comment, I feel myself coming home, if you've started to taste what it means to belong to yourself. You used to react. Now you create. You used to beg. Now you choose. You used to be shaped by the world. Now you shape it from within. This is power, not domination, not noise, but presence. You walk into a room and shift the atmosphere without saying a word, because you're no longer looking for permission. You've given it to yourself. Carl Jung said, we become what we always were, but forgot. And now you remember, you are not here to loop. You are here to lead. By example, by alignment, by energy. Let them say you've changed. Let them question your quiet. Let them miss the version of you that was easier to manage. That was your chrysalis. This is your wings. Comment, I am the creator now, if you've stopped performing and started embodying. If you've made it here, it's not by accident. Something inside you is done pretending, done repeating, done abandoning yourself to be loved. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not who they expected, not who they needed, who you are. And that choice, to become, will cost you comfort. But it will gift you freedom. You may lose people. You may lose the old you. But what you gain is peace, is clarity, is wholeness. So I ask you, right now, are you ready to be misunderstood in the name of truth? Are you willing to lose the fake to find what's real? If this journey touched something in you, comment, "I choose to become." Let's see how many souls are rising. And if you're one of them, I see you. You're not broken. You're becoming.